What's up, everybody? May 9th edition of the Fightful MMA Podcast. Yours truly, Joe Ferraro, your host. You can follow me online at Showdown Joe on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Of course, give us a follow at Fightful MMA and go to FightfulMMA.com for all of your mixed martial arts news. Tuesdays, my co-host will always be the infamous SRS, Sean Ross Sapp, who has long and nonstop maintained this issue with people like myself who are follically challenged or those who shave their head on a daily basis. And lo and behold, before we come on the show, I take one look at him and I see that mop on his head, and I'm almost speechless, but I'm not. Sean, what's going on, brother?
You're almost jealous, and you are.
No, far from it.
That's
sir.
the situation. You are incredibly jealous of this beautiful hair that I have on top of my head, which has just tripled in length over the last 2 weeks.
I wouldn't use beautiful and your hair in the same sentence.
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
I was going to say I wouldn't use beautiful and your hair in the same sentence. That's I don't know what that is. I could probably take some rust off some tires somewhere in this neighborhood with that thing.
How dare you? How dare you? Yeah, I wanted to address one thing, guys. We had said that we were going to do 90 minutes and that the show we would be plugging in segments. Me and the infamous Nigel, who you all maybe have seen and heard of on the Wednesday show, we are working diligently to make that happen. And oh boy, is it something else.
Well, we look forward to when you guys can finally actually do it, because I know the software, from what I understand, is fantastic, but we will get there, and it's going to be incredible what we're going to do with this Fightful MMA podcast. I'm actually excited. I may be the host. I'm not the guy, quote unquote, that'll be behind the scenes as my co-host Sean, who'll be in charge of all the different dials, which kind of scares me what he can insert and not insert. But yeah,
scares me.
Yeah, I'll be looking at it. We already have the live chat going, guys. So if you're online with us right now, and I'll remind you as we go throughout the show here, top right of your screen, there's a live chat. By all means, you can join us at any time. There's already some comments and shots taken by Kyler James towards Mr. Sean Ross Sapp. And Sean, I assume, has already replied. That's not very nice, Sean.
Well, hey, you know what? He's got that little wrench next to his name because he's supposed to be trusted and supposed to respect us as hosts. He's not supposed to say they look like Beavis with the hair.
Kyler, I'm on your side.
Actually, the funny thing is I have actually met Kyler's mom before. I met him and his mother, actually.
That's disturbing, but okay. I got you.
I met him in San Antonio. They were at the Royal Rumble.
Oh, no way. Okay,
good family.
Cool.
A good family, except for Kyler. He's horrible.
You and I have not shared the airwaves here on this information superhighway, if you will, for quite some time. It's been over a week or so. How you been?
Been pretty good. Like I said, trying to figure out this new software, and that's what has taken up probably, I would say, a significant portion of my time. We have some cool changes coming to Fightful. We have some new segments that Wednesday show has blown up in popularity. This one's going to blow up in popularity. The boxing show, who knew that people liked boxing? Apparently they do.
That's impressive. That is impressive. I actually had lunch. Actually, before I mentioned what happened yesterday, I had lunch with Jimmy Van last week.
Sounds terrible.
No, Jimmy Van is the man. I love Jimmy. He's just
what does he
fantastic.
eat? He probably eats Kraft ravioli. He goes to the store and he buys it, and he finds like a microwave close, and he's like, hey, does anybody have a microwave that I can use to heat up this ravioli that I brought to this restaurant?
No. I know you call him eccentric, and it kind of sort of suits him. But at the same time, he's an absolute gentleman, and he was actually cordial when he asked me. He asked me flat out, just up from the office where he's located. He said, "Do you want to go to an Italian restaurant?" Knowing full well it's one of those things you generally don't ask an Italian. I guess you can say the same thing if someone is Chinese or Indian. Do you want to take them to where they grew up in that culture? And I said, no. Listen, if it's a good restaurant, I'm down with it. It's just that I know Italian food, and if I'm going to have some sort of pasta or pizza, I'm picky with the sauce. He's like, well, I looked up the restaurant. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Let's go there. And it was fantastic. And Jimmy ordered, if I'm not mistaken, lobster ravioli. I just had, yeah. He did.
Is that a real thing? First off, is that a real thing?
100% it is. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure that's what he ordered. But
okay. Did he really order it?
Yeah, he did. If I'm not mistaken, he may have gone with Perrier water as well.
That was a complete guess. Like, as a shoot, guys, I had no idea that Jimmy Van ate ravioli.
Yeah, I could be wrong. I hope I'm not, but I'm pretty sure it was lobster ravioli. But it was a good time. We discussed Fightful MMA. We discussed a few different roles for yours truly. I know there was some speculation out there that I was gone. That was never, ever going to be the case. It was just basically restructuring me for the company, and I always had intentions to stay. It was just a matter of, okay, how, what, why, where, blah, blah, blah. So, and then when he posted that tweet afterwards, we're proud to say Showdown Joe's staying. I was like, Jimmy, I was never leaving. So,
well,
but yes.
Hey, we got to capitalize on it. We got to capitalize on this stuff. If people think that you're leaving, we got to capitalize on the fact that you're not leaving.
There was some social media mentions of me not being with Fightful. I'm like, did I miss something? Clearly I got fired. Clearly I got released on my duties. They just haven't sent me the paperwork to sign off on it. There's a contracts involved. I didn't see anything, but yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Adam Ball, on the actual chat saying, glad to see you, Showdown Joe. Listen, I was never going anywhere. We were taking care of some business, and this will only get better. I did have the conversation about wrestling, boxing, mixed martial arts, how they are three different demographics where at Fightful we sort of have them bleed into each other. You mentioned you're surprised at boxing. Obviously a big fight happened over the weekend. Another big fight from that fight will be taking place. Personally, I've never ever once said boxing is dead. Has it dropped down? Absolutely, in my opinion. But I also never realized how massive wrestling truly is, sports entertainment. I've been in the MMA bubble for the better part of 20 years, maybe more now. So my focus has always been on the MMA bubble. I know how big it is, how big it can be, how small it's become, especially in Canada. But are you surprised, as the managing editor of Fightful, when you start looking at some of these numbers with the three different sports?
Yeah, with boxing, yes, because and it's something that Jimmy and I had talked about. We think part of that might be the lack of any other options. There aren't a lot of boxing podcasts out there. There aren't. MMA podcasts, yeah, it's funny because everybody has a wrestling podcast. Everybody. Not everybody has an MMA podcast, but it seems like every fighter has an MMA podcast, which is almost reverse, because in wrestling, every single person just has their own podcast. Then all the wrestlers got into it. In MMA, it's the opposite. Like, all the fighters are getting them, and then slowly journalists are getting them, and then fans are getting them. With boxing, there's just not a whole lot. I mean, a lot of the analysts in boxing aren't necessarily top flight choices, because they can't. It's hard for them to convey their points in a manner that is conducive to television broadcasts. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? We got a couple of knowledgeable guys who are on those boxing podcasts, and it's just a matter of being young in the game, because MMA podcasting is still very, very young in the game. That's just what it boils down to.
Absolutely. And then the second thing I was mentioning before, I had a lunch with a colleague of mine, and someone I've known for quite some time. We just haven't really ever had the opportunity to just be sort of on our own to discuss business and stuff like that. And he asked me flat out, about MMA, about wrestling, and especially about boxing. And I had the conversation with him. I think I talked with you about this before. Maybe it was Frank Trigg at the time. And I know there's probably some boxing heads that are tuned in right now or that may see this. And I don't mean this to be offensive. This is just a personal thing for me, because my brain has now been wired to watch mixed martial arts, where I'm always looking for a kick, a takedown when I'm watching fights, that when I watch boxing, despite the beauty and the sweet science and the speed and the combinations and the bobbing and weaving and the footwork, it becomes overly monotonous for me, where the options are there to do other things, which you can't do in boxing. So I technically find it, I guess, almost boring for my brain to digest. You yourself, I don't believe you believe that. I think you still enjoy the art.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the thing is, I love the combination of all three, and I'm getting back into boxing more and more with each day. That Anthony Joshua fight, it made me love the sport of boxing in a way that I hadn't in quite a while. But I love the aspect of podcasting. I love the aspect of writing. I love the aspect of wrestling, MMA, boxing. I love it all, man.
So it's been a while since we've seen a UFC card, and lo and behold, 3 weeks go by, and we got a doozy, an absolute fantastic, in the great words that Jimmy Van and you guys want me to use, holy smokes, is this a solid, absolutely fantastic card. Do you want to get to that, or do you want to get to some of these headlines? I kind of want to talk about Daniel Cormier and John Jones. I put together an article that'll be up on Fightful MMA very soon about dealing with MMA fans and just media love and hatred.
Hey, you're the host. UFC 211 headlines, whichever way you want to go, Joe. As long as I'm just glad that you're here.
I appreciate it. I do want to talk about. Thank you, sir. And I appreciate looking at your mop every time you speak, because the camera switches over and I get to see that skull of yours. I do want to say, before I get to the DC and John Jones and a lot of other things, because I will in sort of bring in George St. Pierre, Brock Lesnar, and guys of that nature, with my own experience being quote unquote a public figure, nowhere near their level, but I understand what they're doing. I want to discuss that momentarily, but I do want to get your thoughts on the rumor of Chuck Liddell potentially making a return. To point, I was like, I don't think so, and then everyone started throwing the Bellator thing my way. What is your take on that quote unquote rumor?
I would 100% watch him crush some absolute can in Bellator. Greg Nudge, is that the guy that fought Herschel Walker? Bring him back. Bring him back. I'll take it. I'll watch it. That if Bellator wants to do that, sure, as long as he passes the appropriate physicals and the appropriate drug tests, which Bellator's kind of iffy on. I would watch it. Yeah, I mean, if it's in the UFC, no. I mean, unless UFC got into the business of special attraction fights, which they were kind of in with CM Punk. But if it's in Bellator, really, it doesn't matter what promotion. If it's matched up correctly, yeah, I'll watch it. I'm okay with stuff like that, because if not them, then it'll happen somewhere, Joe, and it will, because somebody will offer him money to fight somewhere.
Oh, he'll fight in Russia if he has to. I mean, he's a draw. I don't think he would do that per se. I also don't know if he would go to Bellator. The only
UFC just fired him. He might.
Yeah, well, yeah, but there is a sense of loyalty to Dana White and to the UFC, even though that it wasn't Dana that technically fired him. It was the new ownership that said, listen, these roles of you former champions and stuff, no, that's just money that we're trying to save here.
Is there, though? Because Dana White could afford to pay his salary himself out of what he made off that sale.
Yeah, no ifs, ands, or buts.
He still got released. He still got released.
Yeah, no, totally understand. But I think there's a sense of loyalty for Chuck Liddell towards the UFC. And the only way I could think that he would entertain doing something of this nature would be because he's financially strapped and it's a big payday.
Yeah, but financially strapped. I mean, he still gets like endorsement deals. Like, what was that one that Duramax, or not Duramax, or the AutoZone sponsorship he had? Yep. Like, I mean, it's years later, and he's still kind of the face. Do you remember at that UFC Cincinnati event, and there were several others, where there was the guy in the Chuck Liddell outfit, like the mascot outfit?
Yep.
I was like, that's the UFC mascot right there. That should be the UFC mascot. Like, almost like the guy, the NBA logo. I can't remember who it was. Jerry West, maybe, or whoever it was. Like, that was almost identifiable with the NBA. Chuck Liddell should have been like that. That should have been the mascot. But, as he gets a little bit older, he slurs his speech a little bit. You can never count on what he'll say at an interview. Sometimes he shows up and he's a little out there. So that's understandable. If he wants to get a fight in at Bellator, I'm 100% behind it, as long as it's against Greg Nudge and not like King Mo.
Yeah, no, it's I personally don't want to see it. I'm going to be flat out honest with you. I don't want to see Chuck Liddell return. But if it happens, I'm going to watch. It's just the way it goes, right? It's not I am anti. Oh, I'm not going to watch it. It's not that. It's just for his own health. And I was there for the last 3. I think I was there for his last 6 fights. I think, but the last 3 were obviously difficult to endure, especially the Shogun fight. I was there for the Rich Franklin fight, so I saw it sort of come down. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Do you think it's going to happen though? That's the real question.
Yeah, I do. Otherwise, his coach and himself would have shot it down immediately.
True. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. I don't know. We'll see. I do want to talk though about the Daniel Cormier comments that he made about John Jones and the fans and sort of embracing this role that he's just, same thing happened to Rashad Evans. It's just this role the fans have thrust upon him. And again, I mentioned this in a manner where we don't get UFC on Fox here in Canada or UFC Today, excuse me. So we don't see that show on a regular basis. I have no idea how many times Daniel Cormier is on that show. I don't know what he brings to the table, if he comes off as arrogant, conceited, cocky, or just, doing what he has to do to come off as a heel. I don't know that. I am surprised at times when I see a guy like that booed versus a guy like John Jones, who's now basically getting cheered for the transgressions he's gone through and the stuff that he's done. You got Daniel Cormier who basically came out and said, man, they don't like me because I'm a family guy. They don't like me because after I'm done training my ass off all day, I kind of go home to my kids' soccer or baseball or go home to my fiance/wife. John Jones has also got a girlfriend/wife/kids, is a dad, and finds himself in trouble all the time. Yet the fans now haven't turned on him. They're almost cheering him. I wonder if they're cheering him because they don't like DC. It's one of those things where when you're in the public eye, and I could speak on this because, as a quote unquote public figure here in Canada, I still get recognized. I got recognized yesterday during this lunch. I go pump gas, Sean. People ask me all the time, what's going on? How's this? How's that? Where's George St. Pierre? Is he going to beat Bisping? I get all that kind of stuff still when I go even to the local Walmart or whatever. I'm still recognized. And I learned a long time ago, you can't please everyone. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, whether I was on the left side of an argument, the right side of an argument, the politically correct side of an argument, I'm going to get haters. People are going to disparage me. They're going to rip me apart on social media, no matter what I do. So I quickly realized I'm just going to be me. This is me. This is who I am. And I know I'm going to get hate. It is what it is. You can be the nicest guy out there. They will find something wrong with you. Whether, guys like you say I'm bald. I got a big nose. I've got a Canadian accent. Americans say I've got a Canadian accent. Canadians say I have an Italian accent. Italians say I sound like an American. This is me, man. This is who I am. So for me, for DC, it's like he's embraced it. They think I'm a heel. Let's do it. I mean, that's what he's at right now. I mean, your take on all this.
It's an interesting conundrum because you look at last year's pressers and this was happening. John Jones was getting cheered. Daniel Cormier was getting booed. And for a while, it was the opposite. Like John Jones was getting booed because people said that he was fake. How many times did you hear that? John Jones is fake. He's fake. He's fake. Well, okay. The Daniel Cormier thing, it's funny. My wife can't stand to watch him on TV. And I'm like, what is it? Why don't you like him? She was like, it's just how he comes off sometimes. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, you would be watching UFC tonight. And you could almost see him pick on Kenny Florian and Dominic Cruz, who are much smaller than him, like 50 pounds. He would take little shots at them, and he'd be like, oh, well, I'm a big boy. I think stuff like that builds up. And maybe it is the fatigue of seeing him on TV every week and during the Fox broadcasts and during the post shows, all that stuff. And now they're going to get him doing commentary, which I think I've said before he's fantastic at. John Jones, you don't see that much of because he never fights. And unless he's getting arrested or failing a drug test and doing a press conference, you really don't see a lot of them. So maybe it's fatigue. It's really hard to say because you can't generalize an entire group of people that why they may like or dislike somebody. But it's almost like the John Jones thing is like the Eddie Guerrero. He became beloved because he would do anything he possibly could to win. He would kick somebody in the balls. He would throw a chair at somebody. They would catch it, and he would fall down and pretend like he got hit by the chair, and the ref would turn around and be like, what are you doing? John Jones does whatever it takes to win, and he screws up a lot, but people love a redemption story. Some people love a redemption story. It's really hard to put your finger on why this change has happened, but also Daniel Cormier comes off sometimes as a crybaby to people. Like, well, I don't get what I deserve, and John Jones gets everything. Well, John Jones also hasn't lost. I mean, he lost via DQ once, but Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, so I mean, it's being loved or being hated also has its merits. Just ask Chael Sonnen. He realized real quick, wait a second, my fighting is not doing the talking here. I got to figure this out, and he became the Chael Sonnen that we know today. Conor McGregor, you can say, caught lightning in a bottle, but he's charismatic enough to understand that, you know what, I'm gonna be me. I'm going to talk. He's got the gift of gab, and he does a fantastic job. And he's put himself in a situation where he's one boxing bout away from a massive payday that no UFC fighter probably in their whole career combined may ever make that kind of money. Even the elite guys, he is going to make some killer money if he can fight Floyd Mayweather. So there are guys out there. Al Iaquinta has adopted this stance, and
oh boy,
yeah. I've maintained, and I will always maintain, if there's a character trait that I have, Sean Ross Sapp, is I will always maintain, I don't care what this person says. I don't care what that person says. I need both sides of the story before I can make an assessment. I may retweet, I may laugh at whatever each individual or party says, but it doesn't mean I come up with a full positioning on a situation. Well, the story of Al Iaquinta versus the UFC continues to get deeper, and it's gone deeper. Some information has come out. He's been put on the banned list in terms of performance bonuses. He knew this ahead of time. Didn't really share that. The news has come out. The UFC is not happy with some of the stuff that he has done. Hence the reason why, from apparently trashing a hotel room to not showing up to the UFC fighter summit, to not even telling them he wasn't coming when there was a car waiting for him in Vegas to pick him up. He didn't even board the plane to leave New York to come to Vegas, or to go to Vegas, excuse me. A bunch of different things have been happening with Al Iaquinta, complaining about knee surgery. The UFC he had to beg the UFC for it when the UFC said it's a chronic injury. We don't have to pay for it, but we paid for it. So the stories are going back and forth. He said, she said. Somewhere in the middle is usually the truth. So you have Al Iaquinta, who continues to just go nuts. He even went after this quote-unquote anonymous UFC rep who gave up this information, and he's still going after them. So Al Iaquinta has embraced this almost Diaz brother, anti-establishment, anti-the man sort of stance. I love it, but when it comes to the truth, I don't know who's telling the truth. I just take the information and say, here you go, viewers of the Fightful MMA Podcast and listeners on iTunes and Stitcher. This is what we have right now.
I wonder if the outspoken New York real estate agent gimmick will get over as well as the outspoken stoner gimmick from Stockton, California. I don't think so. Also, Al Iaquinta didn't look as good coming out of this situation as he could have. When it was revealed that he didn't let the UFC know that he wasn't coming and didn't let them know about a car. Sure, I understand that. I think maybe he should have been prevented from getting a bonus, maybe 1 or 2 fights. I think 3 is a little egregious. Also, he was really upset about not getting that bonus. I don't know if he gets that bonus even if he's eligible. There were a lot of finishes on that show. There was a rear naked choke that put somebody out cold. There was a Von Flue choke somehow. Ovent St. Preux, I don't know. Mike Perry elbowed Jake Ellenberger into death. There was the Barberina finish. There was the Sandoval finish. He might not have gotten that anyway. He wasn't getting fight of the night for that. So, maybe he doesn't get that finish at all. I mean, it was a great finish, but there were a lot of finishes on that show. But yeah, I think maybe they should just rescind that and say, oh, well, that was your punishment.
Yeah. I don't know how this is going to ever work itself out. And I maintain, this guy's a conflicted individual like Quint is. I don't know what he's planning on doing, if he ever plans to return on fighting, because obviously he's got the gimmick there, not the gimmick, the actual career in real estate. Yeah. So we'll see where it goes.
I wonder how he's doing. How do you think he's doing with that?
Unfortunately, I can't find out because my mortgage license is just for the province of Ontario. If he was in Ontario, I can technically find out. But you can also find out. Listen, I can assure you right now, ladies and gentlemen out there, real estate agents, many of them, not all of them. There's some legit guys and girls out there, but many of them embellish what they do. I'm a $1 million seller, or I'm a $10 million seller. So you sold 4 houses. All right, cool, in a year. Good job. So yeah, I don't know what else.
I see that he has 2 listings. One is for $350,000. One is for $400,000. One in Freeport, New York. One in Uniondale. One is a 7-bed, 4-bath. What?
Wow. I should buy that place.
What? It doesn't look that great. I mean, for that amount.
Okay.
I mean, a word to the wise. Those of you who are selling your homes. Now, I've never sold a home. The one that I'm in is basically on a land contract. First off, photograph your homes in the day, because if you take pictures of your house at night, to me, who has never been in your house, I don't know the layout, it looks like you're in a horror movie no matter what. I'm like, you know what? That is completely strange to me. I'll probably get serial murdered there. Do that. Also, clean up your house.
Staging. That's called staging.
People don't want to see the way you have it laid out. They want to see the potential of how they might have it laid out. They want to see it empty.
I see a real estate option career in your life there, sir.
Hey, this is just me looking around at houses. I thought about buying a house in my old hometown, and the internet was so bad there, I literally couldn't move there.
I believe, yeah. No.
It was that
Nowadays,
bad.
that's important. Nowadays, that's extremely important. I want to, personally, my wife is forever talking about selling because the property value of the homes in my neighborhood have skyrocketed in comparison to what we paid for it 5 years ago. And I said, I'll move, but I'll move. I need land. I want, whatever, an acre around me. It is Canada. Okay, it is Canada, so we have plenty of land up here. But I want land, and preferably near a lake or near a golf course or both. And then I always realize, if you have land, you may not have internet.
Oh, yeah. See, I'm the opposite. I want a big house and no land. None. I need something for my cats to run around in, like that. The house. I need some space. That's it. I'm good. I keep telling Jimmy, hey, relocate me to Toronto. I'll do these shows live with you and Joe. I'll do it.
We can get her done. We can go down to the office there and have. He's got a nice little spot in Midtown Toronto. Nice area too. You want to buy a place down there? My goodness, are you going to be paying a lot of freaking money? George St. Pierre has informed Michael Bisping, yeah, we can fight, just preferably after October.
Why?
He's got to put weight on.
Any sense?
That's my only thing. He's got to put the right weight on and do it properly and quote unquote not juice. That's my quote, by the way. But not do it in a manner that would be considered illegal. He wants to do it naturally, and it takes time to put that weight on. That is my only assumption. That is pure speculation from yours truly. No, there is no text or phone call that I've had with George to discuss that. But other than that, that's all I can think of, is putting on more bulk to face a bigger guy while maintaining his speed. And to do that, you need to do it slowly. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably what he has to do. But man, this has been coming for a while. Like, I don't know why. I mean, he's been talking about this shit for years. Like, why can't he just? I hate to sound confused and perplexed on one of our shows, but he confuses me. He constantly confuses me. He got this opportunity. He now in addition to getting this opportunity, which already holds up that division, he's holding up the division even more. So he's not endearing himself. And at this point, I'm like, okay, why aren't you booking Anderson Silva versus Yoel Romero for an interim title if you don't know when this title fight's going to happen? I don't get it.
Anderson Silva says he is off the 212 card. Dana White says, if you want to retire, if you're saying you want to retire, be my guest. You should absolutely retire. AKA, this is negotiations through the media, getting your opinion or voice out there. This interim title situation now begins to make sense after George does come out and say, you know what? Hey, Michael, I'd love to fight you. I want to fight you. I still want to fight you. Can we do it after October, which in essence takes Michael out of the division for quite some time, almost a year. Maybe it could be a year in and around that time frame after he defended against Dan Henderson. So to do so, I could understand if the UFC decides, you know what? Yeah, we now need an interim title because our champion is not defending it. Or do you just go ahead and say, George, sorry, Romero gets the title shot?
Well, you can't withdraw that title fight. I mean, it's already been announced, and you got to do it. You got to do that.
Things have happened.
That's true. They have. Right? And that UFC 212 card, it needs one more big fight without Anderson Silva on it. You got Aldo Holloway, Gedalia Kovalkovich, and Belfort's retirement fight. Sunsao Marias, that's a good one, but it needs one more fight. Speaking of, I'll be at a wedding that evening, but I think I'll get back in time to do the show. And Dana White, despite that being a negotiation tactic, he has been consistent in saying, if you even say retirement and you consider it, go ahead and do it. So that I can appreciate.
Yep. Infinity 007 wants to know if there's any decent bets to put on UFC 211. And I do thank handsome Pat Fannin for replying on my behalf. I do an article.
We don't thank him for anything.
Yeah. Okay. I do an article every Friday, generally before a UFC event. After I've analyzed, I take a look at the lines available on the bouts, as well as some propositions. I like to call them fun bets because props, in my opinion, are fun bets. And there's always some good, not I should say always, I would say 99% of the time, there are some good fun bets on a lot of UFC cards where you can take a look at and say, as opposed to putting $100 down to make 110, I can put $100 down and get 700 back. And I take a look at those options. If I actually took my own advice, I probably made pretty good money considering I don't wager on any sports whatsoever. I'd have probably made some good money, especially when Damian Maia took on Carlos Condit. That proposition, or that fun bet, excuse me, was huge. The submission. And I was like, I can't believe happening. There's one right there. But Infinity 007, I will have something up for this Friday with this card coming up at UFC 211, which is absolutely freaking stacked. Holy smokes, this thing is absolutely nuts. 14 fights, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Sapp. I don't know if do you want to go through all of them, or do you want to start off maybe with the headliner for the UFC Fight Pass prelims?
Yeah, let's start off with the headliner for the Fight Pass prelims.
Jessica Aguilar taking on Courtney Casey. This is a good scrap, man. I like this. I know Jessica quite well, she's jumped in the Titan FC booth a few times to talk about some of the fights and break down some of the fights with Kamaru Usman and myself. Courtney Casey has her hands full, but I wouldn't be surprised if Courtney somehow comes out victorious. She is the favorite right now at -125.
Yeah, it's funny because they didn't do Aguilar any favors in her first fight. They're like, okay, World Series of Fighting champion, come on over here, fight Gedalia. Now isn't it crazy to think how long ago that was?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right.
August 2015. Am I right?
2 years ago. Yeah. Yep.
I can't believe it's been that long. And yeah, I think she tore ACL. I think she tore ACL against. Okay. She was supposed to fight Juliana Lima, like at 197, I remember. Now, Courtney Casey, she's won 2 of 3, and her last loss was to Gedalia last year. So I think this is a fair fight to add, to put Aguilar in to test her knee, to test her will. And if Courtney Casey wins, you can say, hey, this is a win over a woman who many considered the #1 ranked woman in that division for a very, very long time.
Oh, she was. Yeah, definitely. Jessica was for quite some time, but she's not getting any younger. So there's a challenge here of not just the ring rust, quote unquote, octagon rust, but Courtney's going to bring it to her. Jessica's seasoned. I'll give her that. She's a seasoned veteran. Pretty much seen it all. She's been in there in the division. She was a champ. Obviously, been in the division with someone who you can arguably say is number 3 in the world, number 2 in the world. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting scenario in terms of how she deals with Courtney Casey up and coming. If we move on to the preliminary card, that's going to be on FX. To my understanding, is that true? I don't know how that happened.
It's going to be on FX, which is funny because we're back to the days of I don't know what channel this shit is on. Fuel, Ion, FX, Fox Sports 1, Fox Sports 2, Spike, Facebook, YouTube, Fight Pass. I don't know. My Network TV, UPN. I don't think it was ever on those two. But yeah, we got the Skelly Jason Knight fight is going to be fun. Not a lot to break down there because you can't break down a Jason Knight fight. It's just going to go in there and swing. Yeah, James Vick and Reyes, that's going to be another good one. But the two I'm particularly interested in, Dave Branch coming over, and then Eddie Alvarez looking to bounce back. But the Dave Branch one, boy, that's an interesting one. 35 years old, and he went on just one of, he's probably, man, he's got it. I think he's the best World Series of Fighting fighter ever, even better than Marias and Gaethje in what he accomplished. Because he won those 2 championships and defended them both, and I think that's just completely impressive. Now, the level of talent. I was just going to say the level of talent's a little bit different, yeah. And it kind of fell off. Like he fought tougher people towards the beginning. Like Philo and Jesse Taylor and Yushin Okami. But, I mean, still, you can't accidentally win like 10 fights in a row and defend each of your championships 2 or 3 times. So I get a lot of respect for him, and this is a good test for him.
Jocko's no joke. I mean, Jocko's going to bring it.
5 wins in a row, 19-1.
So this 185-pound division remains, to me, something that continues to impress. I just like the way it continues to develop. Not that these two guys are going to be upwards in contention after this fight here, but in a division that continues to grow the way it's growing, and so much conversation, not just from the top with George St. Pierre and Michael Bisping, the champ, with Anderson Silva, Yoel Romero, and what, what's the nickname they're trying to give Robert Whittaker? Knuckles?
Bobby Knuckles. No, and he's trying to make it not happen, and too bad it's happening.
I love it. I think that's a fantastic nickname. But it's a division, again, that is getting some love. If it continues to get love, you want to continue winning if you are competing in it. The Chad Skelly-Jason Knight fight, like you said, Jason Knight, it's very difficult to ascertain what exactly he's going to do in a fight other than simply try and knock the guy's head through the cage, over the cage, into the second row. Chad Skelly better be very careful in this fight here and gauge that distance correctly. I'm taking Jason in this fight. That's obvious. Are you?
Yeah, but I mean, if it goes the other way, given
Skelly's
Jason Knight's
Skelly's a minus 130 favorite.
Yeah, given Jason Knight's style, I wouldn't be surprised. And Chad Skelly is one of those guys who really likes to capitalize on other people's mistakes and make them pay for it. So yeah, I can't wait for this fight though. Good fight.
It's going to be fun. Listen, anything after this fight here is just ridiculous. It's crazy. It's almost as nutty right now as the live chat where these guys are going nuts talking about crappy channels. But okay,
UPN, man, we had to watch WWF SmackDown was on UPN for years, and nobody could watch it. It was terrible.
It just, I don't know. It goes to I don't know what to think about the UFC in the Canadian or in the American broadcast realm to hear this kind of stuff, because you mock it nonstop. Not nonstop. You mock it, and you're right. What channel is it on? I mean, now it's going to be on FX. Why isn't it on FS1 or FS2? I know there's other sporting entities that have probably different. I guess you could say if they get the first right on the channel before the UFC does, and there's a hierarchy at every station. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But like I said, every fight that we're about to speak about now moving forward is ridiculous, stupid, unreal, awesome. Headlining this FX preliminary card is Eddie Alvarez, the former lightweight champion of the world, and Dustin Poirier. This fight's going to be absolutely ridiculous because Eddie Alvarez is looking to make a name for himself again in this division, while Dustin Poirier knows he needs to win to remain in contention if he ever thinks he's going to get a shot at that 155-pound title. I love this fight. These guys are going to bang. I don't like Dustin Poirier's chances I should say I don't like his chances standing and banging with Eddie Alvarez. I kind of like Eddie in the stand-up. I think Dustin needs to take this down on the ground and control him, not in a boring fight, but in almost a TKO ground and pound fight. What say you, sir?
Yeah, I do, and it's going to be particularly interesting to see how Eddie bounces back after the McGregor loss. And the funny thing is, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Eddie Alvarez seems more carefree now than I've ever seen him before. He doesn't have a McGregor fight looming over him with all that trash talk. He doesn't have a Bellator contract situation looming over him. He doesn't have the battle of working his way up to a title fight looming over him. And I saw this interview he did where he's talking about Conor McGregor and about his potential fatherhood. And Eddie Alvarez seemed like so relaxed. And he said, well, if he's as 10% as committed to being a father as he is a fighter, he's going to be great at it. And it's just a demeanor that I haven't seen from Eddie Alvarez. And when you see that type of demeanor, you don't know how to translate to the cage for better or for worse. Dustin Poirier, we know his demeanor. His demeanor is what it's been forever. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He always feels that way. And since moving to lightweight was one of the best things he could have possibly done. He's, 5-1 there? And this is a good matchup in that for the UFC, like if Eddie Alvarez loses, Well, he lost to Dustin Poirier. There ain't nothing wrong with that. And the same could be said for Dustin Poirier. He lost to a former champion. There is a way to rebuild this. Eddie Alvarez isn't going to face Conor McGregor ever again. Ever again. But if you want to keep him up there with the elite, you have him face a guy like Dustin Poirier. As you mentioned, Poirier is more than capable of finishing this on the feet, but will he? I don't know. They both have the ability to finish it on the feet. But it's a matter of, will we see the Eddie Alvarez that we saw against Rafael dos Anjos, or are we going to see the one that maybe we saw before that didn't necessarily have the most exciting fights? Either way, this is one of the biggest FX fights. God, or not FX, one of the biggest prelim fights I can remember them putting on.
You make a valid point there with Eddie Alvarez. The option potentially, not that he ever plays it safe, but you did say quote unquote boring. Do you think he may want to play it safe with Dustin Poirier?
Yeah, I think he is. Maybe he fears getting embarrassed again.
That's always
because he was.
Yep.
He was embarrassed by Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor did exactly what he said he was going to do to Eddie Alvarez. He beat the brakes off of him. Not only that, embarrassed him leading up to it, said, you didn't renegotiate your contract, all this stuff.
That was unbelievable in that press conference when he said that.
And you can kind of see it in Eddie Alvarez. Maybe he feared getting embarrassed and stuff. And that is always a concern. You don't want to get the floor mopped with you like what happened to him. So, yeah, it's hard for me to predict, like, stylistically how this fight will go down because we don't know what frame of mind that Eddie Alvarez is going to be in, despite, me saying that his demeanor was a bit different.
Yeah.
But, go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to this fight. It's the one that it's one of the fights where I said, oh, I can't wait to see it go down. And then I look up and down this card. I'm like, holy smokes, man. Yeah. You get into the main card, the main pay-per-view card to kick things off. We may have the next challenger for Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and that only happens if Sergio Pettis can take out Henry Cejudo, who's already taken on the champ. This is going to be a fantastic fight. One would assume, I'm going to take a look at the odds here. Cejudo is a massive favorite at -400 versus Sergio Pettis, who can outstrike Henry Cejudo, but he will not be able to control Henry Cejudo. So this is going to be an interesting dynamic to see what he does in training to understand you cannot let this wrestler get near you, especially this very extremely fast wrestler who's not afraid to throw punches and kicks, not afraid to engage, not afraid to throw overhand rights, and is proven that he's a great fighter, just happens to be in a division where the champion is just on a different level than almost every mixed martial artist in every single division. So as much as we want to see Sergio Pettis win this fight so we get another challenger for Demetrius Johnson, I don't know if that's going to happen, Mr. Sapp.
Yeah, I don't either. And Cejudo striking looked worlds different against Joseph Benavidez, even in an alleged loss. Because I never forget. I told you Benavidez was somehow going to win that fight, but he really didn't win that fight. Mm-hmm. His strike, Cejudo looked much more comfortable. This fight and the next one, Edgar versus Rodriguez, draw a lot of comparisons because Pettis and Rodriguez both implement those kicks so often. But if you implement those kicks against these two guys, Cejudo and Frankie Edgar, you're going to end up on your back, on your side, maybe face down if you leave any margin of error, because they'll put their head into you and they'll drag you and they'll take you down. That's just how it is. Sergio Pettis, it's going to be tough for him to close the distance without getting kicks, or for him to get in range, striking range, without getting taken down, without using kicks. But that being said, with both of these guys, Rodriguez and Pettis, sometimes all it takes is one kick to end the fight.
Yeah.
So
no, absolutely, you're absolutely correct. So I mean, it all depends on how this goes down, and it just simply, to me, breaking this down, it's all about distance for Sergio Pettis, because there's a lot at stake for both guys, Sean. Obviously, Cejudo wants to remain relevant, to some way, somehow get that opportunity to get a second crack at the title. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon, but Pettis finds himself one win away, in my opinion, because he's the guy in the division. I know Handsome Pat Fannin on the live chats, putting up there saying if Pettis loses, we get Borg Johnson, and that might just drive Sean Ross Sapp absolutely insane. But yeah, that's potentially what could happen. Right. It is a division where you kind of want new challengers for Demetrius, good guys. I think Pettis technically would be a great fight, or a good fight at least, for Johnson, but he's got to get past Cejudo. And Sean actually mentioned this a while ago. It's almost as if the UFC should never have booked this fight.
Yeah, it was a dumb booking. Pettis on the streak he's on, 3 in a row against Cejudo, who has lost 2 in a row. Why would you do that? Just that doesn't make any sense. There are a bunch of guys that could have probably had. It's weird. It's not hard to construct things in a way that can't fail for you. You don't get to pick the winners, but you got 2 guys and one of them has to win. Like, you can set up a mini tournament in your head without saying we've got a tournament going on here. You know what I mean? Now, granted, there are people that turn down fights, but slide somebody else in there. Eventually, one of those guys is going to win 3 fights in a row.
100%. Yeah, no, it's mixed martial arts promotion. It's not rocket science per se. There is a science to it, but it's not rocket science. And I think you just nailed it on the head in terms of taking a look at what the UFC could have did before they actually made this fight public. The next fight on this card is very intriguing for yours truly. Obviously, knowing Frankie Edgar the way I do and having spent time with him all across the planet, on the earth, especially in Bahrain with him and Renzo Gracie and Khabib Nurmagomedov. We had tons of great times out there. But man, is he under pressure here, taking on, I guess, Yair Rodriguez, not really an upstart, but man, the dude's a killer. Frankie's a favorite, -140. Yair Rodriguez is a +120. This kid's fantastic. And Frank, I think all the pressure on this fight is obviously on Frankie Edgar. He has to win this fight. He cannot let this young upstart beat him and almost supersede him in any sort of title talk at 145 pounds. Frankie Edgar is, in essence, playing a gatekeeper here, preventing someone like Yair Rodriguez from moving up the ranks and getting anywhere near, Jose Aldo Jr. and Max Holloway.
Oh, I think if Rodriguez wins, he's in the title fight. I think he gets a title fight without a doubt. Penn and Edgar back-to-back. Who else is there? Ricardo Lamas, Cub Swanson. That'd be one.
But I can't put stock in that Penn fight. There's no chance.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't. But Jabroni McGee sitting on his couch up the road who doesn't know any better.
Jabroni McGee. All right.
Yeah, Cub Swanson. I mean, and if not that title fight, because Jose Aldo doesn't like to fight very much, then Cub Swanson versus Yair Rodriguez after that, because that would be an absolute war. But the thing is, you got to just assume that Frankie Edgar is going to win until he just doesn't win anymore. And Frankie Edgar has lost one time in 4 years now? Mm-hmm. One time in 4 years. He can't win a title fight to save his life in 4 or 5 years. But you look up and down the names that he's beaten. Charles Oliveira, BJ Penn, Cub Swanson, Uriah Faber, Chad Mendez, and Jeremy Stevens, but still.
That's where we need the new software that you have, Sean. The new software that we're going to use.
It's happening.
You got to put that in there, and every so often you got to hit that button with Conor McGregor's voice saying, "Who is that guy?" We need it. We need it. We need it. We need it. Sorry, go ahead.
And a lot of the people that he fights, they just aren't the same after they fight him. Gray Maynard, never the same after he fought him. BJ Penn, I think maybe he was never the same going into that. Faber, not really, Mendez never came back. Jeremy Stevens, I don't think Jeremy Stevens will ever be a top 10 UFC featherweight again. So
no, not at this point.
I have to assume that Frankie Edgar is going to win. Would it surprise me to see Yair Rodriguez win? Absolutely not, because he's a tornado.
Yeah, that is the exact definition. He is the definition of a mixed martial arts tornado. Adam Ball, by the way, makes an interesting point. Adam, I think you are mentioning, he said, I think he was basically referring to the Henry Cejudo-Sergio Pettis fight. If it ends in a draw,
Pettis will get the title shot.
Okay, so that's all I want to hear. That's exactly, I concur. The odds of it ending in a draw, you want a fun bet, ladies and gentlemen? Put it on that, because that's probably not going to happen. Yep.
Actually, it might happen. What if Sergio Pettis just hacks away at the legs of Cejudo for 2 rounds. Then that third round, Cejudo takes him down. And where is this fight? Is this in Dallas? Have they adopted the new rules?
Probably not. It's Dallas, dude.
Probably not. That's Texas.
Yeah.
But if he absolutely pounds him out, I mean, I could see that happening. Wrestling striker battles, that tends to happen a little bit more because wrestlers can take top control and pound away and get that 10-8 round. Now, if this were in Vegas, man, you're going to see a lot more draws in Vegas because of that, because those 10-8s are being used more liberally.
Plus 5,500 for this fight to end in a draw. Adam Ball, you might be onto something, my friend. You might be onto something. Plus 5,500 as we speak, if you think Sergio Pettis and Henry Cejudo could potentially end in a draw. Yair Rodriguez, as we mentioned, is a plus 120 underdog to minus 140. Frankie Edgar, he is a tornado. Rodriguez is. That is going to be a sick fight. It's one I'm obviously paying close attention to, only because my affiliation with Frankie or my appreciation for what he's done for me in my career. He's just a cool dude. He's hilarious. And his dad's awesome, by the way. His dad's a freaking mess. I love that guy so much. There was something that Stone Osborne mentioned on the chat saying, expletive, because I'm not going to swear. This could be kids watching this, ladies and gentlemen. Frankie has to be a Hall of Fame inductee the second he retires. In the cage, right there, signed and done.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And people are talking about like the Gray Maynard trilogy, one of the best ever in MMA. I'll never forget that fight, the third fight that they had. And the question I asked, I asked Dana, and I think I asked all three of them about the actual trilogy and their thoughts. And I asked Dana specifically, is this one of the best, if not the best? I think Gray Maynard may have interjected and said, I don't know what effing else I need to do to knock this guy out. I can't bring a kitchen sink into the cage. I did everything. He just won't go away. And it was just the dejection you saw on Gray's face was something else. But man, those fights were absolutely sick and fantastic. I think I was there for all three of them, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it's just incredible to watch those two gentlemen put on a show for the mixed martial arts fans. Speaking of putting on shows, sorry, go ahead.
Gray Maynard might get in there under the fight wing of the Hall of Fame as well because of that.
They have to. That's just absolutely freaking. They have to, especially with those fights there. Speaking of dominant fighters, killers, murderers, I fear her. I've interviewed her. I've looked her in the eyes. She seduced me. I was in love and realized she'll kill me. Step away.
We didn't talk Maya Masvidal? No, Maya Masvidal?
We're going to talk about the championship fight first. I want to talk about, actually, you want to go in that order? Then we can do that. Neither one of those two gentlemen seduced me. I just want to make that clear. I was referring to a female. Her name was Johanna Jacek. We will get to her momentarily.
Let's be honest. If Maya wanted to seduce you on the ground, he would find a way to do it.
I've rolled with Maya. I've rolled with Maya in London, Ontario at Adrenaline, where Mark Hominick, Chris Ordesky, and the boys, Sammy Stout, have a gym. He was up there for a seminar. Texted him. I said, I'm coming up there. We'll do some stuff for Sportsnet. He's like, bring your gi and blah, 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 blah. So I got to roll with him with a gi and without the gi, no gi. And
this is one of the most intriguing fights on the card for me because Masvidal is a little underrated on the ground. Now he's not going to be able to do anything to Maya, but hasn't been tapped out since the famous Toby Imada inverted triangle.
Inverted triangle, yes. Yeah.
It's been that long since he's been submitted. That's really the story of it, is Masvidal striking versus Maya's grappling, and the winner should probably fight Tyron Woodley,
who says he's already training for July.
Yeah. And if it's Masvidal, he's down. He'll do it. And if Maya wins, that he won't be hurt because he never gets hurt.
There'll be a stat somewhere that shows how many times he got hit in this fight. And it might be, I think the over-under is probably 10.5.
Even if he loses, he'll only get hit once. That's just the way. That's just the way.
That's such an intriguing fight, just for the very dynamics of the old school skill set, or the old school matchup. I can't wait to see it. Does Damian Maia get this fight down on the ground and submit Masvidal? Will Masvidal prove that Damian Maia, once he gets hit again, is going down? We got 2 more fights to go. Co-main event, Johanna Jacek taking on Jessica Andrade. A lot of people are looking at Jessica Andrade as the queen, potentially, to dethrone the current queen. I don't know about that. I know the odds are very, very close, or potentially close, with Andrade just a plus 135 underdog. to Joanna Jędrzejczyk's -155. I am leaning towards the champ in this fight. I don't know about a finish, but it could get ugly.
Yeah, I am too. And the thing about Andrade is there was a pretty solid blueprint drawn up by Gedalia on how to do your best against Joanna, but you got to be able to sustain it. And we've seen nothing that lends us to believe that she can sustain this for 5 rounds. But that being said, we had seen nothing to lead us to believe that Cody Garbrandt could do what he did against Dominic Cruz last year. And Jessica Andrade is a woman who has competed with, if there's a weight division around right now, or maybe upcoming, or around before, she's fought people who have competed as the best of that division. Whether it's Angela Hill, Joanne Calderwood, Jessica Panay, who fought at 105 before, Raquel Pennington, who's rocking the shit at 135, Rosie Sexton, who is one of the greats among a bunch of different divisions. She's competed with all that. Marion Renault, who's very good as well. The thing is, Joanna really likes to control the pace, and she slows people down with teeps. Then when she gets confidence, she puts together her strikes. Where this fight, I think, will be contested is against the cage, and they have really different game plans up against that cage. Andrade likes to just slug it out. Like, she likes to really just wail away with strikes. Meanwhile, Joanna kind of picks and chooses. You see her slowly dissecting the opponent, and they're just sitting there with their hands up like this. Like, they're like, oh, shit, I know what's coming. I just want to avoid the one to my face. And she gets to pick body, really anywhere, chin, jaw. She gets to pick. This very well could end up being a cage war. And the thing is, to win this fight, Andrade has to be in range. And the thing is, to get in range with Joanna Jędrzejczyk is very dangerous because of the elbows, because of the kicks, because of all that. Joanna has to capitalize on the 5-round aspect of this fight, I think, and she'll do that in range, I believe.
Absolutely. Stone Osborne's all over the live chat with some serious stuff there. I really like what he's putting up there. The last one was kind of, he says that, Frankie Edgar literally broke Gray Maynard, was never the same after that trilogy. And yeah, I have to agree because, considering the beatings that Frankie took in that fight, he kept going and still continued great with his career. And you can't make the argument that Gray, like you said earlier, Sean, was never the same after that trilogy. So good on Stone Osborne, who also says, I want Joanne Calderwood to start recording audiobooks I would buy. Yeah, dude.
Who wouldn't?
Joanne Calderwood and that beautiful voice. I've interviewed her. Oh, Sean Sapp. Junior Dos Santos, main event, Stipe Miocic for the baddest man on the planet, heavyweight champion of the world. Will it be and new and still or and again?
Usually I hate them running rematches. Like, I just hate it. I just want fresh matchups, but this was such a good fight. A lot of people don't realize that Stipe Miocic is actually older than Junior Dos Santos, which is a little weird to think because Dos Santos was champion 5 or 6, 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think. This is a super interesting fight to me. One, because the first one was so good, but Miocic has a reach advantage, but it's negligible. Kind of, it's like 3 inches, and at heavyweight, you just never know. But the thing is, Miocic likes to fight inside. Meanwhile, Dos Santos, who has the shorter reach, likes to fight at range. Junior Dos Santos was able to drop Miocic, and Miocic was able to take him down. But Dos Santos was also able to capitalize on maybe a not yet prime Miocic, who, if you remember, was kind of giggling at Dos Santos's corner and then got taken down right after that. Miocic's footwork, when I watched it back, it was a little questionable at times, and when he was really squared up.
Yeah.
The shot that Dos Santos used to knock him down was almost like a check hook that was just meant to keep him at range. And because of Miocic's footwork, it put him flat on his ass. So I think that will have been shored up, because I think maybe that was something that Verdum saw, and maybe that's why he tried to do that questionable game plan. Well, let's see if I can affect Miocic's footwork and get him off balance the way that Dos Santos did, and found so much success doing that. That didn't work out for him. And Dos Santos is not going to fight like Verdum did or like Nelson did, where Nelson has no head movement. he's more of a combination of like a power of Overeem and the head movement of Arlovsky. And Miocic didn't lose to either one of them. He had trouble with Overeem, and there's also the aspect of Miocic and his strikes. He doesn't seem to have the power at the end of his strikes at range that a lot of heavyweights do. And I think maybe that's why he fights in range a lot. And when you're fighting a Junior Dos Santos, you're facing a really basic boxer. Like, he's really good, but you're not going to see him throw a lot of kicks. He doesn't grapple like all that much. And even his strikes, it's really limited to like 4 or 5 strikes. And he a lot of times lulls people into that game. And a lot of this is going to be a question of whether or not he can lull Miocic into that game.
Well, the real question is not the real question. One of the questions is, will this one go 25 minutes again?
Oh man, that's the question. I don't think it will. I think Miocic has more confidence in his hands than ever, and I don't think that Dos Santos has ever lost confidence in his hands, despite some of his ups and downs.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to everybody who was on the live chat. Sean, before I let you go and catch up with you next week, we hopefully will have a new looking podcast next week. It should be absolutely fantastic.
Hey, we got a post show.
That is correct. I completely just I would have remembered as soon as I signed off. But yes, Sean and myself will be available after UFC 211 is done with the post show, which is obviously going to be fantastic. We get to recap all these crazy bouts, so it's going to be fantastic. Don't forget to catch us immediately after. I usually send off a tweet and I say the minute that last interview is done in the octagon, I flick the computer on and we get this thing going within 2 or 3 minutes. So be ready, ladies and gentlemen. Tune in right now. Tell a friend. Sean wants you to tell 10, but we will be available right after UFC 211 with a live post-show podcast. In the meantime, sir, then what do you got going on?
Guys, use those forums. We got our forums back up. MMA, wrestling, boxing, movies, TV, music, video games, action figures, anything you can think of. Submit questions for podcasts. Submit questions to our staff. We want to make that forum a go-to for you guys. We want to make it like a home for you guys where you can just go there and talk about absolutely anything. And, of course, I have the List and Your Boy show with Jimmy Van tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know, because we are trying desperately to get Wirecast to work.
I wish you guys the best of luck. I will look forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the disaster that you two guys are, because the podcast is actually fantastic. Jimmy Van and I did talk about it during lunch, and both of us are perplexed, other than me saying congratulations to the both of you, because it is a fantastic podcast. But other than that, we thank you very much for your time. Sean Sapp, I know you're a busy guy. You're still trying to learn the new Wirecast system, and I'm very excited just for the very fact that you can insert so many different things throughout the podcast. Just Conor McGregor's voice works for me, but I'll send you some clips when the time is right. Other than that, thank you very much for your time. Guys, girls, tune in right now and listen later on iTunes and Stitcher. Please give Sean Sapp a follow. He's absolutely fantastic on Twitter. Dumb as expletive on Instagram. I don't know what the hell his Instagram's about.
What are you talking about?
I like all his pictures because he's my boy, but don't just follow him. Just follow him. You'll know what I mean, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a follow. There's nothing intelligent about this kid. He's just out of control. But give him a follow, because I love my boy. He's my boy, despite that haircut. Give us all here at Fightful a follow, at Fightful MMA, FightfulMMA.com for all your. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Oh my gosh.
That's disturbing. All right. Fightful MMA.
The best hair on Fightful now.
Oh, considering all of us are bald, but I digress, or most of us are. FightfulMMA.com for all your mixed martial arts news, at Fightful MMA. And of course, yours truly, Joe Ferraro, can be found on social media at Showdown Joe. We thank every single one of you who tuned in live and afterwards. And don't forget, Saturday after UFC 211, Sean will probably be in a pissy mood if there's some bad refereeing, and it is Texas. It could be a disaster. So we'll see what happens. We thank you all for tuning in. For now, I say ciao for now.